Zach, we are back and we are talking moves to not make, a fun little spin on our normal weekly video. Talking moves to make. Instead, we're talking about the opposite, things to not focus on from Dynasty perspective, as well as moves to not be making. But Zach, before we get into it, I hope that y'all enjoy the video. Please leave a like if you do. Comment down below what moves you're actually trying to make this week, or moves that should be made this week. And feel free to comment on any of the ideas we bring up as well. And to catch more moves to not make or moves you actually should be making, be sure to check out the patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind Discord server. Get in there for a free 7 days. Check out some bonus podcasts while you're there. But Zach, I'm going to kick it to you first. We're talking Dynasty not focus of the week. So instead of, what we're trying to accomplish in a week, or from a strategic standpoint, what are some mistakes you're looking to avoid this week, or one others should be looking out for if they're not right now?
My focus is on not reacting rationally to free agency news. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of players that got new landing spots the last couple of weeks, and we'll talk about some of those in just a second, right? But some of these players have been on your roster for the last 4, 5, 6 months, and you could not move them for anything. They had no value. And now they have new landing spots. This is an opportunity. Some of your players that were dead on your roster 4, 5, 6 months ago have new life. Make smart decisions with those players. Don't always anticipate the ceiling. Some of these players are going to be exactly what they were in their previous spots. Some of them might be worse and some of them might be better, but they're not all going to be better. And that's what I'm noticing with the Gabe Davises and the Darnell Mooney and the Zack Mosses of the world. If you can recoup some trade value, do it now. Make your smart decision. Now, I know you're going to say, but Zach, you were all over Darnell Mooney last week. And you're right, I was, because I could get Darnell Mooney for a fourth. If somebody sends me today a second round pick for Darnell Mooney, he's gone. I am not holding on to that because he's now on the Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins and Drake London and a quarterback that can actually get him the ball. But that's what you're going to see in some of these trade dialogues. Zach Moss is now the starting running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. Gabe Davis is Trevor Lawrence's new wide receiver 1 or new wide receiver 2. And Darnell Mooney is the hottest thing in wide receiver rooms since sliced bread. I don't even know if that was ever a hot thing in wide receiver rooms, but I'm making it for this video. So I am making sure that I temper my expectations with some of these second and third tier wide receivers that got new life. And if I have an opportunity to move these players, I will. Now, I'm not saying move them all. I'm saying make calculated decisions with these players, but stop expecting only the ceilings for all of these players just because they got new landing spots, Bob.
Yeah, I think keeping the, like you said, keeping the opportunity to recoup some value in these trades, to get these players off your roster, to kind of re-roll the player for a pick of decent values. Gabe Davis is somebody I think you can get a good piece for. Zach Moss, I think, is something you can get a decent enough piece for. And Darnell Mooney, if you can get anything for, I'm pretty happy with moving anything plus what you paid for, or if you've just had him sitting around for the longest time because you haven't been able to move him, now's a good time to do it. And I just think that, being realistic about, the big thing to take into note here is that this has breathed new life into these players that you haven't been able to do anything with because they've been, touted as, they're going to be free agents. What's their landing spot going to be? I don't want to buy in. Now, some of these guys who have had pretty cool landing spots, and I do think that there's a lot of people out there that are thinking Zach Moss is going to be a heck of a lot more than he is. I think he could be a solid piece, but I think he's more likely, a piece of that backfield, and certainly not the whole backfield. So look at Chase Brown there, who we both like, or I like a good bit. I think utilizing these guys to trade off of, move off of, whatever you want to call it, and either, use these guys to move up in picks in your draft, trade straight out for picks if you can, maybe look for some other players who are a little down on value wise. I'm all about it. I think, just operating in the mindset that these guys, especially now, we still have a whole draft ahead of us. There's, rumors about Brandon Ayuk being traded. There's rumors about T. Higgins being traded. And if either of those guys end up on Jacksonville, immediately Gabe Davis' value is kind of back in the tank. And right now there's still some people out there that have really high hopes if one of those guys goes there, there's no chance. Or even one of the high rookie in the first round, it's still going to be the same case. His value is going to tank. Same if the Bengals draft another running back. Darnell Mooney, I mean, I don't know if his value is going anywhere, but either which way. And I think this just goes to along with just not even official news, but like I mentioned this maybe a month ago in our Discord, maybe in the Moves to Not Make previous video. There was news buzzing about and rumors spreading that Justin Fields is going to the Falcons or the Steelers, oddly enough. And at that time, everybody was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be it's wheels up for Justin Fields. Go buy low while you still can, so you can flip him for more later." And I was very adamant to say, "Don't play Dynasty House Flipper." And this is what happens when you try to play Dynasty House Flipper: is you end up with Justin Fields, who's now much less sexy, going to the Steelers. Yes, he competes with Russell Wilson. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but wasn't traded for much, so you have to assume that expectations are kind of low on what's going to happen in that situation. But just a thought, keep expectations in mind here. You got to be very careful playing this game because things get out of hand. If you were sending a late first for Justin Fields a month ago, assuming that Atlanta move or the Pittsburgh move was going to happen, congrats, you end up with the Pittsburgh move, but it's not looking great there, in my opinion, if you ask me. So either which way, I'll move along, talk about my not focus of the week. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just this time of year or whatever the case is. Some people haven't checked out our trading strategy videos or the trading strategy guide that you can check out in the YouTube description box below. But one of my biggest rules of thumb when it comes to trading, not sending one-for-one offers at the same position. And I don't know what it is. I'm seeing a ton of it in our Discord. I'm seeing a ton of it in YouTube comments. Shout out in the YouTube comments. Leave a comment if you're down there and you haven't yet. Please and thank you for that. But for whatever reason, I'm seeing a lot of this. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. All you're doing is if you're sending this deal, you are telling your trade partner that, hey, I just want that other player more than I want this one. I value the player I'm trying to get over the player I have. And if that manager has their wits about them, they will say, well, I'm going to make you pay for the more valuable player, as should you if you're receiving that offer. So it's just something to think about. Make sure you're not, doing that. Try to find a way to send an offer that reflects or suggests that the piece you're sending is more valuable, even if it's maybe not necessarily, because values are all over the board. They're subjective. Put yourself in a position of leverage, not in a position where you're going to get countered back something less than fun or less than ideal. Like I said, I don't know what it is. I've seen a lot of this in our Discord, like I mentioned, in the YouTube comments over at fantasycalc.com/trade database, which they're updating, by the way, to include the exact rookie pick of the picks that are traded now, which is a super awesome update. Shout out them. I do like using that website. It's good free website to use too. So check that out while you still can. But that's my big focus this week, or something I'm just hammering in the Discord. I've seen, like I said, I've seen a couple. If you want in there, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. I've seen a handful of trades. Just stop it. Stop sending the one for one at the same position, because you're telling on yourself and you're telling your league mates, hey, I'd just rather have that player make me pay up for it. I think one way to go about it too is you don't always have to ask for that extra piece back. Sometimes just positioning the offer where, you send a third to get your player that you prefer and a second, kind of just find a way to upgrade a pick instead of just going for that straight up additional pick. Just that little bit of a move, even schematically, can make your trade that much more likely, especially if you were doing, like, just for an example, sending a 24 third with your player for a 25 second. To kind of make that work out even more. You get that pick that much sooner. You don't always have to do it, but that's another way you can kind of manipulate the schematics of a trade to make it more appealing. Instead of, sending the swap in next year, send your side of that swap, the third round pick, in this year. As an example, just to put picks and players into this specifically, I send Jamar Chase plus a 24 third, and I get in return Amon-Ra St. Brown and a second. So there's definitely a disparity between the two pieces, but that kind of helps emphasize the pick exchange there value-wise, and makes it a little more palatable for the person giving up what is a lesser asset in a third round pick versus second, but they get to wait all the way till next year to eat that loss. I'm not saying go make that trade, but just as an example, putting players, picks, faces to names, and all that fun stuff. So, with that said, Zach, let's get into your first move to make, or your first, kind of mindset here, looking ahead here on the sheet. So tell me about it.
Yeah, this is something that I talked about on my last podcast, and I'm really starting to dig my feet into this. And I really truly feel that I'm going to be right on this. Do not ignore what the NFL is telling you about this year and every year's rookie draft class. And I'm sure that we could extrapolate this. I'm going to take this back to last year's draft. I'm sure we could do this for the last 3-4 years and see how free agency slots into the effect of the NFL draft in terms of positions. What do I mean? Because I said a lot there. Well, why are you speaking Mandarin, Zach? Well, let me explain. Let's go to 2023 and let's go to free agency last year, right? Tight ends could not get paid last year. Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki, Irv Smith, just to name a few. I think the biggest free agent signing last year was like Josh Oliver, like to Minnesota. Dalton Schultz, 1-year deal. Mike Gesicki, 1-year deal. You go, what the heck is going on with all these tight ends? Why are they not getting paid? And then you look at the NFL draft, and you've got Dalton Kincaid, a first-round tight end. Sam Laporta, beginning of the second round. We had a couple more second-round tight ends. I think Musgrave was a second-round tight end. I believe Schoonmaker was a second-round tight end. We had a lot of talent go early in terms of tight ends last year in the NFL draft. So the NFL said to us, hey, this rookie tight end class is good. We are not going to go out and pay these tight end, these free agent tight ends. That's what happened. Same thing with the running backs, Bob. Last year, the running backs, they're getting on Zoom phone calls. They're having a meeting of the minds. We have to change the NFLPA agreement to pay running backs, less years on their rookie contract. All this hubbub because running backs were not getting paid. Why did they get paid, Bob? Because you had 3 of them drafted in the top 52. You had 2 of them in the top 12, in Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you had Zach Charbonnet drafted at 52. So again, same with tight ends. Last year, the NFL said, these rookie running backs are good. We are not going to pay very much money to these free agents. Remember, they all got 1-year deals last year. Was it Miles Sanders was the biggest free agent signing last year? That was a dud. But Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, even at that time, Jonathan Taylor were all very frustrated with their contractual situations. All of them are on 1-year deals or facing franchise tags. I know Jonathan Taylor got paid. That was in the middle of the year, though. That was not in the offseason. So how do we look at that last year in terms of what happened this year and use that information? Well, what happened in free agency this year, Bob? Running backs got paid, man. They got paid. They got paid big bucks. They got paid years, and a lot of them got paid with Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs. These running Devin Singletary, all these running backs you thought were 1 or 2 year deals, all signed 3-year deals, right? So to me, what the NFL is telling me is that in this year's draft, there are not going to be very many running backs selected in what we would consider early territory. I don't think that we will have a running back drafted this year before Zach Charbonnet was drafted last year, which was 52. I think that potentially the first running back is in the end of the second round or in the third round, which at the third round running backs are where you start to get dicey with them. It's like, I don't know. And then if you're Nate, you're just totally off once they're day 3 guys, right? Same thing with wide receivers. What happened with wide receivers in free agency? Well, nobody really got paid. Calvin Ridley, because the Titans are just crazy. But nobody else really got paid. A lot of wide receivers on short-term deals, 1-year deals. We haven't really seen the extensions yet for some of these guys. We haven't seen the JJ extension. What's going to happen with Waddle? There's a couple of other guys who are awaiting potential extensions. And none of that news has come out. Why? Because this draft class is loaded with wide receiver talent. So what I'm doing with this, Bob, is I'm using the information that happened last year where the NFL told me what they value in the NFL draft. I'm going to assume again, and I think this is very safe to assume, that the wide receivers are very valued and the running backs are not. And look, here's the thing. You guys have been saying on this channel, oh, you're going to get some great value in your running back. I am not depending on that, and neither should you. You should not have a need at a starting running back position and hope that somebody in this draft class fills it. Because if you don't get a single running back drafted till round 3, well, guess what? Now we're all in a really tight spot at the running back position. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is I'm using the information that the NFL told me. These rookie running backs that are coming in are not super valued. Maybe they'll be good. Maybe they'll be a value later in your rookie drafts, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be top-notch NFL wide receivers and therefore top-notch fantasy wide receivers. And I am making sure that I have my running back position safely addressed going into my rookie drafts. Whether that means it's James Conner, whether that means it's Isaiah Pacheco, it doesn't need to be a superstar, but you need to have somebody who's going to have opportunity and production at your running back and not depend on these rookie running backs, Bob, to be starters for you.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Zach, and I don't think you're wrong by any stretch of the imagination. I do think we need to temper expectations on these running backs, and I'll be the first to admit that I do think there will still be values at running back in this draft class because everybody hates them, and I think when you're getting running backs in the second round, that I do think there are still plenty that can go day 2, while more probably go day 3. Every situation is its own. There's going to be running backs who end up in good situations and running backs that end up in bad ones. And I think what we tend to do when running backs end up in bad ones that we can clearly see are bad situations in terms of there's not much path to, starting time, reps, volume, or they're in a bad offense in and of itself. Maybe both situations are true. We tend to romanticize the situation into more than it really is, which they're just a depth piece that maybe develops into something, but more than likely not. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some of these guys that maybe get drafted earlier than people think into plus backfield situations that are, worth more of a consideration than others. I think something to take into account too is that there was a salary cap increase this offseason, which I don't think plays a ton of a role. I think it helps a little bit, having that salary cap increase, making, running back contracts a little bit more palatable, especially looking at them. A lot of them are pretty fluid down the road. There's a lot of wiggle room on a lot of these contracts too, which is what it is, and I don't think in general you should really plan on running back help for more than 1 year ahead of you anyway. And I definitely agree too, not relying on any rookie running back year 1 to really be a solid starter for you. Neither should be in your running back 1 slot. None of them should be in your running back 1, running back 2 slot. Maybe a desperation flex, but I definitely agree that more often than not, you should have these guys pegged out to be at least in year 1. This could change come draft day once we see maybe situations that are in front of these guys. But, day 1, these guys are desperation flexes at best. Find other ways to sort out your running back room. I think, hoping for day 1 starters at running back right now in this class is not the move to make. And I think that is, spot on with what we're trying to do here, Zach.
It's going to be tough because I agree with you. There are some values and there are running backs that are talented, but if the NFL is telling you something, it's not wise, fantasy speaking, to go against it.
And I think if you want to know which running backs are the right ones to draft, keep it plugged in here. Subscribe if you're new, or if you just never want to miss an episode ever again, hit that notification bell at the bottom as well. So you'll be notified when we drop a new video every morning at 8 Eastern. Don't miss the next one or any other one. But with that said, I'm going to get into my move to not make, and saw this in the comments, saw this in our Discord, saw this everywhere. Do not make the mistake of devaluing Rashee Rice because of the Marquise Brown signing. First and foremost, a good wide receiver signing does not automatically mean that one or either wideout's production is set to be ruined. Both players can go to a team, both players can be on a team and coexist, and be good, especially in an offense like the Chiefs that throws the ball and throws the ball well. It's a good offense to be a part of. Another reason why I'm not afraid of Marquise Brown stealing much, if any, production is whether due to injuries, offensive situation, whatever it is. Marquise Brown's best seasonal finish was wide receiver 24 in half PPR in his 3rd season. Otherwise, he's been a fringe wide receiver 3, 4, or worse. Meanwhile, Rashee Rice just finished as the wide receiver 27 as a rookie, which was wide receiver 28 in points per game. So we've already seen, a heck of a lot better start to a career for Rashee Rice. Hollywood has played outside for the most part in his career, 80% outside to 20% inside, while Rashee Rice was darn near a 50-50 outside slot split last year. I dare anybody to try to say outside slot split 100 times fast. Not in the comments, it'd be too easy. But looking at some trades over at Fantasy Calc /trades database or trade database, excuse me. Rashee Rice has been bought for the likes of Brian Robinson, Jordan Addison, Javonte Williams, Marquise Brown himself, Christian Watson, and Zamir White, all since the day of the signing, which was last week, Thursday. So the only one on that list that even gives me any pause is Jordan Addison. But at the end of the day, Rashee Rice has so much more upside solely because he's, in my opinion, the one in that offense. Obviously, you have the receiver one in Travis Kelce. Guess what? The clock's ticking. You can't expect this guy to be around forever. I know it's, maybe foolish at this point to try to guess a year that he's going to fall off, but looking long term, Rashee Rice is the guy, and I think Marquise Brown becomes a nice compliment to him, and I think they're a good compliment to each other. I think they can both be good and thrive in this offense, and Marquise Brown can have a better season than he's had, especially if he can actually stay healthy for once. At the end of the day, I just think we have to get over this mindset of player A goes here, that player B was already in the situation of it doesn't have to make them worse, automatically. And then looking at these deals in reflection, I'm not saying you'll be able to buy at these cheap costs. Some of these, in my opinion, are really, really cheap. I'm just saying that there's doubts, and where there's doubts, there's values. And I'm just saying, make sure that you aren't one of the ones to sell out now when the price is maybe low or he's super accessible. I would be much more in on the buying train for Rashee Rice. And while I think Marquise Brown can be functional in this offense, he's on a one-year deal. Rashee Rice is set to be there for another 3 years. It's a prove-it deal for Marquise Brown. Not saying he's not going to get extended or anything like that, but I'm much more in on Rashee Rice than I am in on Marquise Brown. I'd much rather sell Marquise Brown at the rates he's going. I've seen him go for first-round picks on the trade database website. And Rashee Rice seems to be going at lower cost than he was just a week ago. So I'm all in on going to get Rashee Rice. Don't make the mistake of devaluing Rashee Rice just because of the Marquise Brown signing. If you don't like Rashee Rice, fine. But don't make it because of the Marquise Brown signing. That's not a thing to make the mistake of.
I get what you're saying. I'm not the right person to say this to because I'm not a Rashee Rice person, but I am also a fan of this principle in and of itself, right? You don't have to sell a player lower just because they may potentially get a little less work in the offense, right? It's like it's happening with Chicago right now. Everybody's doing this with like Cole Kmet, DJ Moore. It's like, no. Sometimes a better offense is good for you. Like you might not have 90 catches, but maybe you'll have 10 touchdowns. Sometimes a better offense is good for you. You score more points, you move the ball more, there's more yards to go around. So yeah, we don't have to do this thing where a player comes in and cause and effect. Like this guy came in, this guy sucks now. We don't have to do that with every, and that's kind of the meme in the Discord, by the way. It's like, Alexander Madison's out with the Raiders. Zamir White stock down, baby. It doesn't have to work.
I remember it being said about the Pharaoh Brown signing of the Seahawks, and everybody was like, "Stock down, no fan. Watch out." And
Right.
New England standout tight end Pharaoh Brown. Yes, that is definitely one of the jokes, but it was said in truthfulness. And like I said, I'm just saying, in general, don't make the mistake, but especially not with Rashee Rice, in my opinion. We're going to get into some certifying moves to not make. And these moves are not good. These are moves that were pulled from the Discord. Not all of them were made by our patrons, but they were shared as a means of for reference by some of our patrons. Some of our patrons are involved in these deals, but good on them. They are on the good side of the deals, in my opinion. They made the right moves. So they're certified in that respect. So if you like one side more than the other, it's a good chance our patron made it, and you could too if you were in that Discord. But let's talk about the first one. And Zach, I know you're looking at the show sheet. I'm going to skip past the first one because I want to do that one last. So I'm actually going to start with number 2, but which is really number 1 for us. And in this deal, we saw Mike Williams moved for a 2026 third-round pick, a 2026 third-round pick. Zach, I know you've kind of been the value buyer of Mike Williams from time to time, or he's, crossed your mindset. He's part of your ethos of guys you want to go buy. So what do you think about this one? Moving Mike Williams for a 26th third. Our patron bought him for a 26th third for reference.
Yeah, I would buy him for a 26th third in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
People are oh, you're getting me back to this conversation we had before the show last week, where I'm just like, and just for some more context, Bob and I recorded a free agency show last week, and we did it the day of the first wave of free agent signings. And so, obviously I'm having conversations all day, and people are just being ridiculous all day with, oh, this guy to the moon. This guy sucks now. So here's the thing about Mike Williams. Whether or not you think he's good or not, he's going to play somewhere. And he's going to start. He's going to be a wide receiver 2 on that team, probably. Let's go look at the last 2. Like, how did people forget this about Mike Williams? He was wide receiver 10 in 2021. And he was wide receiver 30, although he missed 4 games. In the last 2 seasons prior to this season, Mike Williams, 400 fantasy points. Prior to him tearing his ACL this year, he was averaging 17 points a game this year, Bob. People have discarded Mike Williams. I don't know why. I don't understand why. And I'm speaking with the frustration of it's happened in our patron league, where nobody is interested in Mike Williams. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, what have you seen of Mike Williams on the field that says he's not good? Please tell me. Yes, he missed 4 games last year and he tore his ACL. Injuries happen. But are you telling me a 26th third is worth Mike Williams? This is absurd.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest takeaways for me is it's not the right time to move Mike Williams, especially not for another player, because it's a picks market right now. Picks are going for more. So if you're trying to get a 24 pick, you probably are looking at an early 3rd round pick. And I don't think that would be the worst thing. If you get 301, make that kind of deal for Mike Williams, I wouldn't call that terrible, in all honesty. Like, especially with how good I feel this wide receiver room or the wide receiver class is. If you were trying to, rebuild, I don't feel like that's too bad of a deal. But this 26th third, you're not only getting a third. I think his value is just closer to a late second, even though I'm not necessarily in love with paying that right now. But again, that's the picks market. When we get into season, I think you get a 25 second pretty easily for him, especially for a competitive team. If he's showing out well at the start of the season, doesn't have a team as the time of this recording, but we're getting that third, and we're getting that third 3 years away. So you have to wait so long to cash in on that pick. And yes, maybe you can, trade it at some point to help sweeten the pot on a deal, whatever the case is. But it's just so far away. Even if you're desperate to move off the guy, like you're in a rebuild, whatever the case is, just wait a little longer until you're getting proper value for the guy, or use him in a better deal where you're moving up picks in the draft or something like that. Turn your late second into a mid to early second, something along those lines, to just help more than a 26th third does. Because the 26th third, like I said, 3 years away, could be late for all we know. Who knows? But so shout out our patron. It was a good buy for him. Getting Mike Williams at the cost of 26th third, and cashing in on some, I think you could say, Mike Williams fatigue, player fatigue, whatever the case is, just some kind of panic. I don't know, but that's a move to certainly not make. Moving on to our next one. We saw Austin Eckler moved for the 301 in a 12-team Superflex, 0.5 PPR. Zach, how do you feel about this one?
I'm interested on which side we're applauding here.
I don't know. Are we applauding any side?
I think I don't know. I don't think this trade is that bad. I feel like on the surface, you'd want to get a 2nd round pick for Austin Eckler. But this is where what I talked about earlier comes into play. Is it what's the big deal that the number 3 is in front of that pick? You're getting pick 25 instead of pick 22. And this is an opportunity because Austin Eckler could be off the fantasy radar in a year. That's a real possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that we are in that realm now where Austin Eckler's career is coming to an end. He wasn't that good or efficient last year. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of close. If I was the Austin Eckler owner, I'd feel like I'd want a 2nd, but I would probably buy Austin Eckler for the 301 in a lot of circumstances and situations.
Yeah, I think this value is pretty close. I think that Yeah, it'd be great to get a second. I don't know. Right now, especially with the picks market, maybe if you're trying for a 25 second, you maybe can get that done. But trying to get one now, I think you're pretty SOL. Our patron was the one who was able to buy Austin Eckler for the 3rd round pick, which I think is appropriate, especially if you need an end of your flex running back flex starter that can help you in a PPR league, albeit it's only 0.5 PPR, a little less exciting for somebody of Austin Eckler's talents, especially when you look at that backfield being Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. You're going to be very reliant on, not that you weren't before, but very, very reliant on Austin Eckler getting that reception workload. I don't hate it. I think, if you're going to have options to draft running back there. If you're looking for a competitive asset in that spot, I think Austin Eckler might be a better bet for year one, maybe year two, but definitely year one, in my opinion. And then moving on to the last one, technically our first one on our list, but I just decided to jump all over things and, just throw a wrench into anything I could today. But we saw the 101 moved for Justin Fields plus Will Levis plus a 25 first. This is a super flex league, and that 25 first belongs to the 2024 champ. So that pick is presumed to be late. So we moved the 101 for Justin Fields plus Will Levis plus a late 25 first. And this was just a couple days ago. And my one note is how bad teams stay bad. Zach, your thoughts?
Man, so you're telling me the league champ just got the 101?
Yep.
Oh, I'd be so mad in this league. I'd be so mad in this league. And even more so, you know what I'd be doing in this league, Bob? Is reminding people of this trade. Like every week, be like, oh, how's it? And this happened in one of my leagues. Somebody moved back from the 101 and they picked up 107 and Justin Fields. And I'm like, how's that deal look now? How's that? This is obviously somebody I was trying to trade up. I had the 103. I was trying to trade up to 101. I'd be reminding, that might be a little on the, start some friction side. That's okay because this is bad. This is bad. And you just let the league champ get the player of his choice, which, sometimes even if you feel like you're getting the good value, sometimes you got to do things for the betterment of the league. I have a league with, I feel like I talk about him in a lot of our videos now. Coop, one of our patrons, we're in a great league. And he did this phenomenal job of rebuilding. And he offered me like 3 first plus for Justin Jefferson. And he is loaded. And I said, listen, man, I'm not going to be the guy in this league that puts you over the top. I am not going to do it. I refuse. And lo and behold, he bought, I don't know, CeeDee Lamb for those 3 firsts. I was like, oh, there it is. And,
at least it wasn't you.
I'm like, sometimes you have to think about the greater good. Like, if I make this move, am I competitive anytime in the near future? And so allowing your league champ to get the 101, I mean, you should have some kind of fantasy penalty. Like, you should go out on the street and put a sign around your neck and tell people to honk at you if you're bad at fantasy or whatever, because you've done your league a disservice. I mean, you cannot be letting the league champ get 101 for free. What did he give up in here to move to the 101? What in his starting lineup did he just give up? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a possibility that Will Levis was there, but I mean, I wouldn't count on it. And maybe Fields was like coming out of last year. Maybe those were his second and third quarterbacks, but Justin Fields now set to be a backup, projected to be a backup for at least this year. Will Levis, as much as I like to have a positive outlook with that offense going forward. Still was a second round pick last year. No guarantees that he's going to, pop off and be the guy, and a late 25 first. Probably about an early second, late first times 3 for the 101. Just did not get enough in return here. Should have gotten, a first round pick this year, should have gotten another better player of consequence or 2. Schematically, this deal is bad because I can see I can see 3 ways that this deal goes poorly, and a heck of a lot less that where the deal goes perfectly right, where Justin Fields is now a top 12 quarterback, so is Will Levis. That team falls apart, and that 25 first that was projected late is now early. But I'd call that on the low end of the possibility spectrum at this point. So again, if you're going to move off your 101, you got to be very careful with how you do it. And I talked through in a previous video was to trade that 101 for, and you want to haul, you want to get a lot of pieces, but it wasn't enough here, in my opinion.
Here's the thing about this kind of trade, right? When you trade off the 101, you have to have some sort of security. You have to say, if this goes wrong, at least I have this.
Sure.
And the 110 to 112 is not good enough. Because that in itself is a crapshoot. There is a real world that you're living in where in 2025, you have 2 backup quarterbacks and the 112. That is a real possibility. That's not hyperbole. That could happen. There is a chance that could happen. Because, as you said, Will Levis is a second-round pick. If this year doesn't go well for Will Levis, they will move off. They are not invested in a second-round pick beyond this year. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kenny Pickett. First-round pick, moved off after 2 years. So what you've done to yourself now as that owner of 101 is put yourself in a spot to where next year, sure, maybe your pick is high, but the pick that you traded for is low, and you have 2 backup quarterbacks that you can maybe get a 3rd or 4th-round pick for at that point. You have to protect yourself.
Sorry, Zach, didn't mean to cut you off there. You touched on it just now. The only security you added in this pick is that your first-round pick next year will probably be high. And like I said, this is how bad teams stay bad. So if you're going to move off the 101, be darn sure that what you're getting back, you're getting something concrete, because you should be. And, obviously if your team is that bad, get a lot of younger, good pieces. But this right here, this is probably going into some of, believing the offseason hype and the free agency hype of thinking that Justin Fields is going to be more than he is this year, and believing that Will Levis is locked in, even though he's really not at the end of the day. And this 25 first, the 24 champ, you can't expect this to be anything higher than, like a mid-late pick, like 108, 109, he's that player, that manager is more than likely going to make the playoffs. Like you said it beautifully. You could be sitting on the 112 and 2 backup quarterbacks next year. What are we doing?
I need the comment section, Bob, to let me know if I'm wrong for continuing to remind the league of that trade. Like, what would you do? Put it in the comment section. What you would do in your league if this happened, because I would be irate. I would be so angry that somebody allowed the league champ to literally get the 101 and it cost their starting lineup probably nothing.
Well, everybody, while you are down there in the comments answering Zach's question, be sure to leave a like on the video and comment what moves you're trying to make this week, as well as moves you're trying to avoid when it comes to strategy, when it comes to getting overhyped on free agency news, whatever the case may be. And above all else, the number one move to make, head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Check out some bonus podcasts while you're there. But with all that said, Zach and I are going to get the heck on out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.